as educators, you know that when you prepare for a lesson, you learn that stuff so much better than you ever had. And the, let's see, so that got me thinking about, the degree to which we learn, if I demonstrate something, you might learn a little bit. If I tell you something, you'll just learn less. If you do it, you learn more. But if you prepare yourself to teach it, or if you teach it, you're going to force yourself to grapple with whatever topic it is at a higher level. Similarly, if you know that you're going to be teaching something as you're learning it, you're paying attention at a much higher degree because you immediately know at least one way that this new material is going to be relevant to you, right? So if you're going to be teaching this, I better saddle up because I want to get this under my belt. So the best way to learn anything is to teaching. So to teach it. So this is, I want to show you something that arrived in the mail for me the other day. And in addition, just to making my day, my week, my month, it gave me this really fun idea of things that we can do. Let's see, we're going to flip this camera around. And here it is. This is a step-by-step guide to how to draw the golden pheasant. And this was made by a young nature journaler. And he mailed this to me. And look at this. This is really, really interesting and really, really exciting. For me as an educator, I can look at this and it's clear to me that whoever made this really has absorbed this material. But in order to make this, our young nature journaling friend, Ray Bonto, had to break down for himself, not just to do the steps, but to be able to understand what his steps are in kind of doing this drawing of the golden pheasant. So like here in step 2, he's showing you not just, here's how you sketch it out, but he's emphasizing that what you're doing is you're thinking about shapes and angles. And he's got this little inset drawing right here, emphasizing fundamental shapes and angles that you're seeing in the drawing. Then adding in gray lavender pencil in the yellow parts, black grape pencil in the darkest parts, putting that together. And what it is, it's a really clear step-by-step in how you, in the process that he uses for breaking down a drawing, getting it onto paper, and then using color on top of that. And then here is the supplemental piece. Look at that. Isn't that cool? This is really inspiring to me as a teacher, right? I mean, if you're thinking about like, how do I assess what my students can do? What an incredible assessment. If they explain to other people their process for doing something, it's this window into authentically what their process is. And I mean, what a powerful way to learn anything and then to convey that information. And so I wanted to think about engaging our students as teachers, preparing demonstrations of aspects of nature journaling that if there's some part of it that they feel like they really are getting under their belt, or any trick or secret that they've developed, if we can get them to share that with other people, that will reinforce those things much more for that individual student. And then in addition to that, for them, for themselves, that will take this information and lock it in at a much higher level. So this just, it made me really start to think about the impact of getting ourselves to teach, not just to teach nature journaling, but how to teach our students how to teach nature journaling. Because then other students can look at this, they can get those tricks, and again, for themselves, it has this impact. So wanted to just bounce this idea around with you. I'm going to remove my little spotlight here and go to the gallery view here. Any thoughts, comments, or observations? Well, actually, I see Ray Bonto actually in the background there with Arpan. So this is the person I was just talking to you folks about. This is the young man who made this demonstration. Maybe if you feel comfortable doing so, Ray Bonto, would you be interested in telling the group about your personal experience? What was it like to create a step-by-step? What was your experience of doing that?
It was like so.
Can't go far.
I was a bit, I felt like drawing over it instead of copying it, but still, I thought that copying it would make it better because I already had drawn on the letter. Well, not exactly like that, but something similar. I can't explain it, but.
Why did you come up with that step by step?
I thought that Jack must have a gift along with the letter, and I couldn't find any thing to give Jack, so I decided to give the step by step.
And why do you create step by step? You created many step by steps. Why do you like creating step by steps?
Because I like it. I don't know why, but.
Okay.
All right. So you enjoy the experience was fun for you to do that.
Yeah, quite fun.
Yeah. So it's sort of neat to see your own process and then and show how you're building something. Like when people look at your final result, we can see what that is. But it's also there's so much thought that goes into that and so many steps. It must be also rewarding to sort of see to be able to show what that full process is and all the different kind of angles that you're taking into account.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ray Bonto, thank you again for sending that to me. It means a lot to me that you shared that with me, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And oh, sorry. Yes?
I said thank you for your classes and sessions. It's invaluable. It's priceless.
Well, thank you. Right. I'm going to jump now over to Ann Chadwick from Point Blue Conservation Science, and love to hear your thoughts on this.
So this isn't nearly as impressive as what Ray Bonto did, because he had that complex pheasant over and over and, the steps, but in a very simple way. And I copied this from our Nature Journal Club Facebook page. Somebody had posted the steps to drawing a water drop. And so I just took a quarter and traced the quarter to get all these circles, and then filled in, darker and darker and blending and so on. And so that it got it into my head. You had done one session on it, and that was super helpful. And I was just so curious about, more of how do you really do this, and how am I going to remember how to do this, and where the light comes in, and there are shadows and reflections, and it's so complicated. So that helped. And then I used that doing the cedar waxwing, and I just wanted to put, a different way of putting the different habitat and food and nesting and so on. So I made those all little like water drops based on what I had just studied. So to me, it was a great learning experience, and I can imagine it would be a great teaching experience. And a great way for students to get it deeply into their brains of how to do these things and share with others.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that.
Absolutely. So what was your, first of all, your kind of aesthetic experience of creating the step-by-step? What was that like?
It was fun and interesting, but it was also a little bit tedious because you had to do each, like this, you're just doing one step, but you're doing it 8 times. Then you're doing the second step 7 times, and the third step 5 times.
Mhm.
I'm losing my math here, but you do it over and over. And by the time you get to the end, you get this great result, but you have to keep building it up. And I think that's why it sticks so deeply into your brain.
Mm. So it's making you do repetition.
Yes.
It's forcing
Yeah.
you to put in some iterations and some reps. And that's interesting. That's very interesting. And also it's also interesting to me that part of the experience is that it is work. So, and I see that as actually being a good thing, because it's in that the work that our brain is going to kind of grow and change. So you can actually, if you're feeling that there's part of it that is challenging, that's the wonderful feeling of your brain growing, right? But it's interesting I hadn't really thought about the way that this forces you to do repetition in a way that you otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, I
That's
hadn't
neat.
really thought about it either. I thought, oh, I'll just draw each of these. And then I realized, no, I kind of need to do each step all the way through and add to the next one. So this one has all the steps. This one only has 4 of the steps,
Cool.
So yeah, it was fun.
I like that.
And I
Thank
think
you.
a good learning process. Yeah.
All right. Are there any other sort of thoughts, ideas, or comments, or any? Has anybody else ever done a step-by-step that they might be able to share with people, or just sort of thoughts on that process?
I'll chat a minute, but yeah, I'll chat just a second. It's more on what Ann just did, but my students, which are as interested sometimes as maybe a group like this, since I have a variety of levels with all ages, and well, not all ages, high school, but all levels, because it's special ed to AP chemistry in one. So when I'm going, they all have drawn those balloons with a little highlight. And I say, kind of a simplified form of what you just did, Anne, but the balloon works, and pretty soon their things look like there's some shape to it. So so they are that, just a balloon and the highlight. So you can make the balloon longer, you get, big, small. So anyway, there you go. Yeah. I've broken down some things too, but so many. Perspective is one that you use a lot of blobs and that, but if I break it down into boxes, I say, I know, yeah, my connection again. Yep, it's weird. It wasn't like that before. Too much. So anyway, it's okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'll let you go on then.
All right. Thank you. And we hope that we can get Marcia's connection back. Sometimes when you're having a slow connection, it helps to just turn off your video. Then we can hear your audio. All the bandwidth goes into doing that. Any other thoughts, comments, or observations about the idea of student step-by-steps as a teaching tool?
I
Yes,
could
Chris.
speak to that, but not in the visual sense of nature journaling, but quite often I've used it with craft projects, with I've taught high school ceramics for years, and students learn a whole lot if they not only prepare it, but they do it. And frequently I just, as Marcia said, it's an age ability grouping, but they're self-seated into groups of interest. And if they teach to a small group, it's wonderful. They listen, and I have the groups rotate around, so they do have to repeat it many times, which gives them a chance to do it better the next time, both as they demonstrate and as they speak. It's I can't say enough about repetition for learning. And once you see it in yourself, you know how valuable it is for the students to repeat over and over. But you just have to make it an interesting situation. I can see in nature journaling where it might be nice to have group leaders who take a small group, or just start with maybe a partner or two and explain something, or as a part of a large group when we get to go outside. Anyway, that's my 2 cents about it.
Yeah, certainly in situations where we get on any subjects, having our students teach other students whatever that is,
Right.
is crazy powerful.
It is.
Crazy
I
powerful.
set a scaffolding of skills in ceramics, low end on up to a high end, and just challenge them individually to reach that step. But they had to have other people watch them do it in order to pass the step, which was a nice teaching tool as well. And I had the advantage of a couple of real life situations that they could be working towards. They could be demonstrating for the school during career day. And also the very, very best ones got to include their pottery in a wood fire, especially done with a real famous potter in the area. So they were working towards that goal as well.
Excellent. Katya, was wondering if you could say a little bit about your experience with peer mentoring.
Okay. Somebody had mentioned it earlier that when you teach something, it helps in, you had said it, that it helps enforce your learning. So what I would do is I would pair kids. I usually, the very first pairing, I would go up and down the list, and I would pair the highest kid with the lowest kid, meeting kind of in the middle. But I would always make sure that the kids had somebody who got it to work with them, because it helped. Firstly, it helped the kids who were struggling. It helped the kids who were getting it because they enhanced their knowledge. But one of the other things is that sometimes the kids speak a more similar language. And
Yes.
because it's fresher in their minds, like, I'm sure I could go back and rethink, how did I learn how to use watercolor paints?
Mhm.
But if I'm teaching it to say a group of 5-year-olds, and one of them is getting it, them teaching the next 5-year-old is it's fresh in their mind. They just learned. They haven't been doing it for, I won't say how many years, but so I always tried to have peer learning. And I was the teacher. I liked small group settings. So I would work out small groups in my classroom, and my small groups were never homogenous groups where there was the high, medium, and low group. Firstly, the kids in the low group always knew they were the low group, and they always just figured that nobody expected anything of them anyways. But the other thing is that I could focus on a child who was struggling a little bit more if one of the kids who really got it was helping somebody who just needed a little bit of encouragement. So the dynamic of having heterogeneous groups of all differing abilities was really successful for me. So just saying.
That's cool. Yeah, and I also kind of like the idea that as you're mixing them, you're not like, if I get paired up with the kid who everybody kind of knows, like that's the kid who's just like got mastery on this subject. And if if it feels a little bit more kind of random in how people are paired, then I don't know, like, okay, I got paired with Sally, that means I'm at the bottom of the class.
Generally, it worked the other way. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
That the kids said, and the way I discovered is that I had that one year where I had a homogenous group, and I had a little girl who was autistic, could read anything. She could decode absolutely anything. And so kids heard her reading in the group, in the whole class, and assumed she was the top of the class because she read so clearly, but she had no idea what she was reading. She could not, she could not process that way. And they just assumed that if they were in the group with Elizabeth, they were the best readers. So I said, you know what?
Interesting.
Let's try that. And it worked out very, very well. And one of the things that it just occurred to me is that sometimes the reason a child doesn't excel could be they're shy. So putting them in a smaller group setting means that they've got less of that effective filter going on. But things like a learning disability, like being dyslexic, it doesn't make you less smart. It just means that you have difficulty processing certain types of information, and so when you are with somebody who's not looking at you and saying, well, he's got dyslexia. And so look, when you're working with another child your same age, you're working with somebody who says, hey, Jack's pretty funny, and blah, blah, blah. And they have their own rationale about you that has nothing to do with the teacher's assessment necessarily.
Vocabulary is real important too in that. And I think when they teach each other, they understand it. They trust each other. They know that it's a more direct way. And you can listen to it and see whether you were successful.
Right. You pulled out a big thing about the vocabulary. Is I had a little boy one year who was severely dyslexic, but his vocabulary was so outstanding that even though he struggled writing his own name in 3rd grade because it was just, and so I worked with the parents about getting him help for the dyslexia. And the next thing I knew, he's in the highly gifted program because he was brilliant. He was smarter than his sisters, and they had tested gifted by the time that I had him in my class.
Interesting.
But his vocabulary was so wow. And in 2 languages, because he was a bilingual child as well. But yeah, there's so many factors that when you look at the child and you say, well, his reading score isn't very good, so he must be an idiot. His reading score might not be very good because he doesn't care about this test, or because the testing is not done in the way that he learned it, or the testing is just not, not interesting to him. There's so many reasons that a child tests high or low that have nothing to do with native ability. But by allowing them to peer tutor, you get rid of all that testing stuff that's just BS, mostly BS in my book.
I agree. Yeah, I was written off by almost all my teachers throughout my early education because of my dyslexia. Katie, what? I just realized that there's a little blue hand. Katie, would you? Sorry for making you wait. Let's spotlight you for just a moment here.
I just want to comment about 2 things. One is that when I also found that kids really teach kids well. And what I also found is that I always look very carefully for things that each child can help someone else with. And if I have a child who might experience difficulty with reading or writing, and I find something somewhere that child can help someone else with, and I especially try to find something that the child can help with, help another child who comes across as strong reader, writer, speaker. That child, when he or she's helping someone who seems to be very strong usually, that child just blossoms. I find, but I'm very specific and particular about how I pair, but I'm on the lookout. Or if I see the child struggles in math and all of a sudden that concept, boom, got it right away. Excellent. So who needs help? So and so is ready. And I find that they just love it. Oh my God, I actually can go and help. I can help Susie, who usually gets everything and helps everyone. Oh my God, that is wow. That's one thing. And step by step, if we go back to step by step, tutorials or those kinds of instructions, I work with little kids, and they find it. They don't have patience for it. They just say, "Okay, I've done my horse. I've done that bird. Done. Okay. So you want me to do it a couple of times? I know we talked about that done is not done, and you can always expand your understanding and observe more carefully. And that's what I'm trying to encourage them to do. And they're gradually getting a little bit of it. They're still young. But asking them to draw the same thing a couple of times.
Yeah. And
I would be very careful with it.
Yeah. From your experience, at what sort of general, I know age levels there's a lot of wiggle room with it, but at what point do you think that would be an effective strategy?
I think it also depends on maturity. Some kids in my class, I'm teaching, 8-year-olds. Some kids probably can do a couple of steps. The ones who would try to get to perfection, those kinds of kids who would be determined to do it. But kids who like quick, who want to be done, they would just get frustrated. I don't think primary kids in primary grade can benefit from it fully.
Right.
Again, kids are at different levels of maturity. You can't generalize. Some kids would love it and would go for it, but especially if you have a bigger audience, if you know your own child and you're doing it with your own kids, they can do it. But you don't want, when you have a bigger audience, you don't want to frustrate kids. You want them to love nature, to enjoy it, to want to learn more, not to get them discouraged and say, well, you know what, forget about it. I just tired of looking at that flower 5 times. I'm not doing. That's just, I would say when they get to grade 7, 8, they seem to have a bit more stamina or that perseverance, that when especially if they like it.
Yes.
It feels like Bonto really likes it. And he, as you said, he's intrinsically motivated. This is the key. And kids who are in position like that, who love it, and they would be brilliant, just like he is. Really enjoy it and will be determined to finish it. But not all kids are there yet. Or will be there. Who knows, right? People are so different.
Yeah, that's a very good thought. Thank you.
Can I just jump in and say one thing? I'm so glad Katie actually answered my question about the ages, because I'm a 1st through 3rd grade Montessori teacher, and I have the same trouble. But there are some students it's worth it for, especially if you model repetition. They'll begin to understand, not just in their art, but in their writing and reading and everything, that repetition has meaning, and that this is something they'll do later. But I also wanted to say that now the Yale Center for Dyslexia has changed their name to the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity, because they see it as inextricably linked. So knowing that, it's a fun place to go for resources. But John, I thought that was important for you to hear, just because that's how I look as a teacher. I look for the creativity in all my children. And that's why I'm excited about the nature journaling and what that's brought about for them. I don't have that much experience, and I'm excited about the step-by-step process for myself so that I can teach it. But now, what Katie said, I'm not going to hope for have high expectations.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you.
And you said you're with your Montessori classroom you have, it's primarily what ages or grades?
Well, 6 through 9, ages 6 through 9, grades 1 through 3,
Yeah.
and we're modeled on, we have the multi-age classroom, which takes advantage of the peer-based mentoring, and kids realize that they have strengths and weaknesses. Everybody's different, everybody develops at a different time, but that we're a community of helping people, so that you will jump in and help somebody if you're found to have a skill that somebody else doesn't have,
Great.
because we're all wired differently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Avea, you had a thought to add to that. So we're going to go from Avea and then Seth.
Thank you. So okay, sorry. Now I have a ton more thoughts because this is such an awesome discussion.
Oh, good. I love the way your brain works.
Thank you. So because I've been thinking at first sort of the same questioning about which kids would like to do the repetition and such, and so I was thinking about my own thing that I do for Jack's class, is that whenever you're teaching, I draw the steps to how to draw the birds, and I try to write down the names and stuff. So I'll add like a little bit more each step, which helps me. And I was thinking part of why I got inspired to do that is because when you do your slides, you usually show one more step added on when you're showing us how to draw things in the class. And so then it made me think of the modeling and, you know, how to model that for the kids. But then we were talking about that already. And so then my next thought was about intrinsic, the whole idea of intrinsic motivation. And I'm wondering if different ages might find different things more, you know, motivational in the inside. Like if there's just some ways to kind of look at that and figure out what's more concrete for some. And then at what age do they sort of get into more abstract and more intangible sorts of things that might motivate them? And then I was wondering, Diana just said, everybody develops at their own pace and at different things. How do you model and teach that for your kids? Like, what are some ways to do that? If anybody has any ideas. Thank you.
Joan Deak wrote a book about the elastic brain, Joan Deak, and she's wonderful because she uses rubber bands as an analogy. Everybody's born, you know, it's simple, but take 3 rubber bands, one is short, one is medium, and one is long. And so I, as a teacher, will use my own experience to model what I mean. And I'll use the long, stretchy rubber band and say, this is me and creativity, and I get ideas really easily. And because it's fun, I'll practice it more. And when you practice, your muscles get honed, and you want to do it more because it's more fun. And then I show the tiny little rubber band and I say something, depending on the kids that year, I might say, oh, this is me skiing. I'm afraid of skiing, so I don't do it. And I don't want to practice it because it's scary. And if I practiced, maybe this would develop a little bit, but not likely. And then the medium rubber band is something academic like math. I mean, I just generally do that and say that when I practice every day, I remember my facts better, something like that. And then I have them write down as a follow-up exercise what they see as their strengths and what they see as their areas of need or weaknesses. But only they can tell them, only one person, only the person themselves can know what that is for sure, because nobody can tell you what you like and what you don't like. That's one idea.
Thank you. Let's jump over to Seth, and then I wanted to respond to what Avea just said.
Hello, I'm
sure.
Seth. Oh, thanks. This is my first time. Thanks so much for hosting these. And I'm teaching my first nature journaling class virtually. And so I'm going to throw out, if it's this time or maybe another time, anyone has done that as well. I'm looking for ideas in terms of the virtual and not having everyone together in the same space. But I did want to jump back a couple thoughts to the concept of peer mentoring and students teaching students. It occurred to me teaching online, and we're all just they're posting their pages to a central site. I was thinking that because of my experience, I'm thinking about peer mentoring and students teaching students as part of, or one of the tools for in the feedback loop. And it's really them providing each other with feedback rather than me providing the feedback. And I'm finding that their feedback to each other is way better than what I could give. So I'm stepping back, and what I'm having them do is I'm having them post their pages from the prompts on a daily basis in the class, and then that evening they all have to go and they have to make comments on each other's work. And that is really, that part of it is been, for me, I think for them, the best part. So kind of wanted to put in a plug for students teaching students and peer mentoring, not so much on the instruction side, but on the feedback side, I've seen it be super powerful as well.
That's cool, because that's also going to get you more, that allows for some really authentic interaction. Sort of one thing that kills feedback if it's kind of a canned thing, like a comment that, you know, the teachers are automatically putting into every one of the 30 students, and for them to be able to kind of drill down and give specific feedback, I think is very, very helpful. In that, a little bit of scaffolding on giving comments and feedback, I think is helpful. I often, you know, one of the strategies that I use when I give feedback is that I don't say to anyone, oh boy, that's a beautiful picture of a parrot. It's just a gorgeous parrot. So I don't give feedback on the pretty picture thing. And because at the start, I've told all the students that it's not about making a pretty picture. And I have to model that in my feedback. So if I say it's not about pretty picture, and then I say, great job, pretty picture. Or if you look through the comments, like, great job, oh, that's so good. Oh man, that's so pretty. Oh, you rocked that. Oh, that is, see, then that's reinforcing that what we're doing here is about the pretty picture. And the kids who can't do the pretty pictures are just like, I don't like this. This is really spotlighting where I'm. So what I do is encourage people and have people practice it a little bit, to give feedback on a specific observation that somebody made. Like, it's interesting that you notice that on the pine cone, the bumps are big on this side, small on this side, right? Or on a way that they, not on the picture itself, but a way that they used words or pictures or numbers to document, record, or describe a phenomenon that they have, an aspect of the phenomenon that they can see. So for instance, you could say, you know, you used a cross section to show the shape of that stem, right? Really effective use of, you know, kind of cross section strategy. So you're looking at the strategies rather than the product. And so sometimes giving the students also, I love your idea about really engaging the peers in feedback. And then I would also just encourage, you know, just to sort of to talk with them frankly about it. Like, you know, the purpose of this is not to make pretty pictures. An interesting side note, by the way, is that when you keep doing this, you're going to get better and better and better and better at making pictures. But that's not our goal. It will happen. But if we put the goal, if we sort of say up front that this is about those pretty pictures. Sorry about that, everybody. Silence, you telephone. You will be quiet now. These are not the droids you're looking for. Boy, there went my train of thought. So yeah, to give them training on how to give feedback. And so I really like Seth's idea of engaging those peers with it. Using, I wonder how breakout rooms might be used in peer mentoring. The other thought that I had about sort of thinking about the step-by-step is that in a step-by-step, the emphasis there is in the process, right? If you're trying to clearly show your steps, it's less about the final thing at the end and more about the steps that you got to get there. And I wonder about the impact of using step-by-steps to help direct people towards process. Katie, let's jump over to you.
I just want to make a comment about, you know, again, I'm only speaking from my experience with working with young kids. So I'm not sure people might be speaking from their experience, other experience. But Diana, you were talking about how people generally know what they're good at. So they are the only ones who can speak about it. What I found with young kids, very often they know they're good at something when they hear others speaking about it. Mm. So they might not realize that they are, if they can see that they're improving, if they're reading this level and then all of a sudden like level 13 and then they get a book level 14. The numbers show that the one book seems to be a higher level, so they know they are improving. Or if they hear that somebody is reading at level 25, they think, ooh, that person must be reading very hard books. But what I found is that generally kids know that they're good at something if people around them tell them that. For example, the parents are saying, oh, you're good at drawing. So they know, I'm good. Or you're good at math. Or, so what I found when, in terms of, you know, helping kids form that kind of, build that confidence, because sometimes I ask them and they say, well, I'm not good at anything.
Interesting.
And that's a lack of confidence.
But,
so what I found is that I get kids to tell other, and this is through appreciations too. When they hear appreciations, they think, I'm actually kind. I'm doing kind things. I didn't even think of that. I just opened the door. I held the door and turns out it's kind. Okay. So, and I also heard that so-and-so is kind because that person, or polite because that person said good morning. And so, you know, by building those maybe helping people share those kinds of appreciations and comments. And I find that very often people this is constructive feedback as well. Jack, you're very good at it. When you share, you help people see good in whatever people are sharing. And other people are noticing that too. Oh, you organize your page in such a helpful, effective way. So other people are looking and thinking, okay, so that's an effective way because Jack said, and Jack understands. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's also the level of respect because people have respect to people who have a knowledge.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Sorry, it's you're modeling what we do in class. And, you know, nothing's in isolation. So our birthday, everything about what we do is modeling as teachers what we want to see kids do, that it is about process, not product, and that you can appreciate something about somebody that is abstract, even when they're thinking concretely, because that gets them thinking about who they are and exactly what you said, Katie. But I have to strive for getting students to see just because somebody told them they're good at something, it doesn't always mean that that's what they like to do. When kids are told you're smart, you're smart, you're smart, it can work against them because they think they should be good at everything. So we're constantly working on metacognition to get those kids to think, how does it feel in their body when they've done something? How do they feel? What does pride feel like? We don't say good job. We want kids to understand that they are ultimately going to be responsible for how they behave in the world. And the only way that starts is once they start intrinsically understanding their feelings. That has to do with conflict resolution, community building, and all the rest. But I could go on because I love talking about my job. I'm going to stop, but thank you so much, Katie.
No. We encourage this kind of participation. That we want these ideas on the table, and I just want to point out to you that it is awesome, fantastic for this community to have experienced teachers like you folks sharing and bouncing ideas off of each other. A big part of my my approach to giving feedback, I want to sort of that where that comes from is the folks over at Stanford who are studying growth mindset have put me onto some really interesting research. And if you tell a kid you are really good at math, right? The impact on them is surprising. It's interesting. So there, I'm not talking about their process. I'm talking about a characteristic that you have that is good at math. So if you, and so there's these crazy experiments where they had, for instance, kids do a little math test. Kids do a math test, and there are proctors watching them take the math test, and then they finish the first half of the math test, and they go get some milk and cookies. During the milk and cookie break, the teachers, the proctors, kind of pick up the tests and they pretend to look at them very carefully, right? And then you randomly say to half of the kids that, you know what? During the break here, I was looking over your paper and watching, I was also watching as you were doing the process. You are really good at math. You are a natural. You've just got an instinct for this. And that's really impressive. That's terrific. You're great at doing math, right? Congratulations. And then to others, you go like, you know what? During this process, we looked, I was watching you kind of solve problems, and I was also kind of just looking through kind of the notes that you had as you're solving problems. And you're trying ways of solving these in interesting and nuanced ways. You weren't giving up. There were some challenging things in there, and you kept kind of looking at it. And on one of them, I saw that you had started to do this, and you actually solved it a different way. That's the way that mathematicians think. That's really cool to see. So what you're doing there is you're giving them feedback on process. So one was the product of like, you've got this great math brain. The other was looking at things that you did of not giving up and those sorts of things. And so they would just randomly assign some of the cookie eaters to group A or group B. And then they would say, all right, I'm now going to take the second part of this. Oh, by the way, there are two piles of tests. The first pile, these are questions that are exactly at the same level that you were just doing. And you can choose those if you want to. In the other pile over there, those ones they're more challenging. They're more challenging. There's some interesting ones in there. And again, we're interested in how you solve problems. It's not about, how many you get right, but you can choose from either pile that you want. So let's now go do after you finish your cookie, let's go do the second batch of tests. And kids would go get a test. And then what the researchers were doing is they were watching which pile kids then went and got papers from. So all those kids who you said you are good at math, they went and got papers from the pile just like they had done before. And all the ones where you talked to them about their process, they went over there, probably not all, right? They went over there and got the ones that were also more challenging. And the thinking around this is that if I tell you you're good at math, then you've got this fixed trait. You are good at math. And you know what? That has an end to it, right? And the last thing that kid wants to do is to bump up against that end and sort of see like, and now here is my boundary. I'm now good at math, but I'm just this good. And they don't want to disappoint themselves. And more importantly, they don't want to disappoint you. They, like you just said, I'm good at math and now I'm failing, right? They don't want to disappoint you. And so they're going to show you that they can do that again, right? And they're going to go get those papers where they can go be good at math. They also, in a different test, they gave feedback to kids in the same way of you're good at math, and others where they looked at their process. And then in the way they had the test taking situation set up, it was easy to cheat if you chose to do that. And what they were doing is they were looking at who then chose to cheat. And kids, I think as low as like, kindergartners would be much more prone to cheat if they were told these sort of statements that are kind of the fixed mindset statements, you're good at math, as opposed to the process-oriented ones and reinforced with kind of growth mindset ideas. So in my feedback to students, I really avoid saying like, you're good at that, but I really try to get myself to look at the process. So either the observations that you're making, and I just reflect those observations, like I noticed that you noticed that, that's good noticing, right? Or engaging them about the questions that they're asking. Like you're asking this question, I haven't asked that question before either. That's a really interesting question. Like, what could that be? That's really interesting. Let's kind of unpack that more, and kind of going down that street, or noticing things about their process or nature journaling strategies. That could be as simple as like, wow, you've got metadata on every page. Do you do that first or do you do that at the end? Like, how do you get to be so consistent on that? I need to do that with my nature journaling too. What are you doing? That sort of a thing. But it's really interesting. The kind of feedback that we give can reinforce a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And I think those are useful things to think about and keep in mind. And we can also, and then kind of jumping back to what Seth was saying with the peer mentoring, some coaching for the students in how to give the kind of feedback that is the most useful. If I have in my head, if I know the sorts of feedback that is going to motivate kids towards a growth mindset, and that's in my vocabulary, I want to I want to get better at giving good growth mindset comments. That's going to motivate the kid who's getting those growth mindset comments. And just think about from the perspective of the kid who's giving the growth mindset comments, you're sitting there thinking, I want to give growth mindset comments. What would that look like? And the more that they do that, then the more that these ideas are also sinking into them.
Yeah, I just want to chime in, Jack. I do the same thing. You are a great model at how to give feedback or feed forward, as you call it in your book. And for anyone who is here wanting to know what good feedback looks like, is come if you can, or watch the videos. Actually, I don't know if they're recorded on the videos. The sharing is not, but if you can come live on Tuesdays and Thursdays, watch Jack as he gives feedback on people who share. Or come to Sundays. I do a live nature journal club every Sunday morning, and a part of that session is devoted to sharing. It's the best part, I think, of the whole morning. And I give feedback, appropriate positive feedback to every person who shares. And that single act has made me so much more comfortable with doing it. And I think that I do it well because I keep hearing people coming back for more, because they're getting this feedback that they need that's really helpful to keep them inspired, to keep them encouraged, and to keep them going. And the students that are in my classes, I teach them how to do this. It's still a work in progress. When people are new, they're really less likely to, to dive in and make those comments. And I know what it felt like when I was new teaching nature journaling and not knowing what to say to that kid other than, great job. It's like you want to give them that great feedback on the process. So I would say watch other teachers that do it well, whoever you admire, or just get ideas. The How to Teach Nature Journaling book has a whole chapter, a section in the back. I think that there's some examples of some phrases that you could use. You just fill in, you just exchange out the nouns or the adjectives, and you can come up with this language. And the more that you do that, it becomes natural. It might feel a little kind of clunky at first, but the more that you do that, then you are changing your brain to seek out the strategies and the techniques, maybe not techniques, the strategies and the thinking. And as you are reinforcing that this is not about the pretty picture, it's about the process. The journal is actually my thinking. It's showing you what I was thinking about when I saw that rose bush, and that we're focusing on making progress, right? Looking at things more deeply, practicing our observations, and it's not perfection, right? A lot of times we come to the table with school or with art with it needs to be perfect, but I like to say it's progress and not perfection. We're really focusing on the progress, the building of muscles, the building of skills, and we do that with repetition. I heard that today, repetition, right? Even for us as teachers, the more that we repeat, the easier and more intuitive it becomes. If you saw the way that I gave feedback in March compared to what I do now, it's very different. I feel much more comfortable in my skin when I'm doing it, and I think that the students feel that. So sometimes it's less about the exact words you say, but just be aware of what you want to reinforce and what you want to say. And I think that, that's a really great place to start. Let's see, what was the other thing? It was, yes, the growth mindset instead of fixed. Come on Sundays, come check it out and be a part of the sharing. We have an open to the public online site where I'm encouraging people to post their journal pages, and I talk about how do we comment on each other's pages, right? And I'll say you can use I notice and I wonder on someone else's page. Like, what do you notice about that person's page? Like, what did they see and what makes you curious? Like, maybe they drew some picture and wrote some words, and then you had some questions about that. And when you have those questions, that can help that person, can like give them the idea of like, oh yeah, I could have asked that question, or like, oh, that's another thing I could have added to my page. So, using those prompts of I notice and I wonder, it reminds me of is good for even when you're looking at someone else's page. So I think that's it. Those are the ideas that popped up in this conversation. Thanks for starting it off.
Oh, fun. So I just popped up a page of mine, Melinda, and just wondered if you'd be willing to, just as an example, I'm going to put this on as a spotlight and just give some feedback here.
Okay.
And see like what would you, if this were, a student page, and notice notice what Melinda says, but also notice what Melinda doesn't say, right? So yeah, people were talking about, in the chat about the whole idea of talent, like, oh, you're so talented, about how that's a totally fixed mindset concept. So it'll be kind of interesting. So if this, what would you do for feedback here?
Yeah. Okay. So if a student presented this, I would go, oh my gosh. Well, I see that you've noticed that this plant had a couple of, like a range of colors on it. It wasn't just green. And I noticed that you noticed that it was red at the tips. That's so interesting. And I see that you've also noticed that like the older leaves and the inner leaves were different. And oh my gosh, that's a really great use of the cross section. It really gives me a detail that I can really see the leaf in 3 dimensions. Gosh, it's triangular. That's so cool. Let's see. Oh, whoa, what is that yellow no there? I can't exactly read what it says, but I can see
it says that it's got a wet pulp that's slightly colored with the skin tint. And then I say, no, it's a gray-white translucent matrix that can pick up the transmitted color as light passes into it, but it is not the same color as the skin.
Oh, that is a great observation. So did you notice that because you looked like, did you take it apart and cut it open?
Yes, yeah, I did. So when I first kind of broke it off, it looked green on the inside. And so I said like, oh, this one is green and this one is red, right? And then I broke it open and realized it was this sort of pale gray matrix in the middle of both of them. And what I was seeing was just light that came through the outside skin like a stained glass window. Ooh, there's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. And gosh, you know what? That makes me think about why this ice plant might have this clear gooey stuff inside. Huh. You know what? This reminds me of the aloe plant. When I was growing up, we would go out and break off the leaves of the aloe plant whenever we got a burn or a cut or a scrape, and it had a clear kind of stuff in there. I wonder if they're related. The other thing that I would probably notice is I noticed that you put a little mini landscape on there. That's really cool because that gives me context to where you found this plant, so that I can tell that it was at this beach where there's lots of sand. And let's see. Oh, and I noticed that you have some metadata in there with the is it the temperature?
Mm-hmm.
And the date and the location. Those are awesome pieces of information to put on every page. All of our pages should have that information. That's awesome.
So nowhere did she say like, oh, that's a pretty picture. So she's engaging me with what I engaged with, and sort of and then that inspires, and then I get excited about that again, and then,
yeah, and then we had a conversation about
and then that's like, she mentions the aloe, and then I'm putting that down in my, it reminds me of, and it becomes this conversation. We're interacting over the observations, and also she's reinforcing the critical things, like there's your metadata, that's, and sort of noticing that you're zooming in, you're zooming out, taking in the context. So all of those are, I think those are good examples of feedback where she's essentially taking the I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of approach and just doing it with what's there on the page. And it's a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that re-excites me about what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to talk about it too. Like, and then she's asking questions like, how did you like, oh, did you take that apart? So she's asking, she's doing an active I wonder, and that re-engages me with my observations. And then we got off, and that was when she started asking me questions about it, and about, she's asking me questions about my process as a naturalist. How did you see that? Did you take it apart? And that is putting the emphasis exactly where we want it to be with those students. That was it. Thank you, Melinda.
Thanks for that opportunity. My heart was racing. And I think it's because I care, and I
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fine. I know that it was totally fine. But I just want what occurred to me in that process is that maybe if we had a way that we can practice this for teachers or whoever is interested, because that's how I learn. And I didn't have this opportunity to be able to talk back and forth with someone, but perhaps there's something in that, that we can have an opportunity where we're practicing. Oh, that sounds kind of fun, Jack. Maybe like we do this breakout where we break out into pairs or trios, and we all bring our nature journal, and we go around the circle, maybe in threes. We go around the circle and practice giving feedback, understanding that we're not going to do it perfect, and that the practice is what makes us better, right? Just like pencil miles.
And maybe what we can do is, since maybe it's just part of the educator forums, as sort of warm up or wrap up, that might be kind of a fun thing to do on a regular basis. Everybody kind of bring your journal along, and we'll throw everybody into some small breakout groups, give people a chance to just do some sharing, talk, and also just kind of interact with each other on a small group level.
Sounds great.
That could be a lot of fun.
And I'll just say it is very hard not to notice the beautiful technical aspects of a drawing. And if you accidentally say something, just let yourself off the hook. Just know that, your awareness and your desire to want to teach the growth mindset is the difference. So you can do this.
That's so
we're
true.
here to help you.
We're just about the end of our time here. Let's jump over to Avea. Let's see here. And oops, I spotlighted Anne. Hi, Anne. There we go. Let me remove that spotlight. Oh, there you go.
Thank you. I was going to second what Melinda said about if you're shy about feedback using the I notice, I wonder it reminds me of as a way to start. I'm starting to use that myself and it helps. The other thing I was going to say is it sort of ties into something we were talking about yesterday in your class, Jack. What might be kind of fun to do with your kids is to invite them if they have their own notebook and they're starting out to either on the front or on the inside page, write, "Welcome to so-and-so's brain," because then it reminds you and reminds them that it's about the thinking on paper. And to have that written reminder for them and you also means that it might help you influence the feedback. And remember, again, the reminder that it's not a pretty picture. It's nice to have those things, it's nice to remind people of that, this is your brain on paper, but I liked what Jack said yesterday where it was "Welcome to my brain." So that could be kind of fun. The other thing, two other things is that what Melinda was saying about duos versus trios, maybe this is something for a different time, but to ask if the group size changes the dynamic of feedback and whatnot. Because we were talking earlier about, whether the kids are like, oh, I got paired up with the smartest in the class or whatever, but if you're having threes or a different group size, does that change how feedback is given? Does that change how kids feel about each other? And then also, if people wouldn't mind, I know some people already have, do you mind writing down in the chat what age range or grades you teach and whether you're teaching at a school or at home or at a outdoor thing? Just because I'm curious to know the different backgrounds of all of our students. So I was just wondering that.
Yeah, and I'm going to chime in for a second. I hope I don't break up, but wave to me or somebody say something. But I would be very hesitant as a public education teacher to put in what's in your brain on the cover. As a mandated reporter, where you need to be really careful how you voice some of those things, because there's things that end up being, not where you, So some more directed in certain situations. And then Jack, I have a question about your Nevermore with the bird in the bubble. Is that what it said?
Yes, it did. That's right. It was a little raven. There were huge numbers of ravens at that beach that day, and one landed near me and started croaking, and that inspired me to drop that in.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. Now, see, in teaching high school, when I would see something like that, that would be a possible red flag.
Oh, cool. Interesting. So yeah, and what's amazing about this, as you're pointing out, Marcia, is that this journal, the more that you are really effectively and authentically using it, the more it is it really is the conduit to understanding our students' thinking.
Yeah.
And and the, you know, if you are ready to go there with the students, I mean, what a powerful gift. But it'll probably also take them time to develop that trust with you. Something that I suggest that students do is that if they, this was a trick that was given to me by another educator. What she had her students do is, in their journals, if they put something on a page and then they looked at it and they felt, you know what, that's more for me, and I don't feel comfortable sharing that. What she had them do is just to take their page and fold it over like that, as like a triangle, fold it over that part. And when she would get to those folded over pages, she would not read those pages and look at those pages that were folded over. And then what she found is that the students would then, as they kind of developed more trust, they wanted to be more of an open book to her, and then they would open that page, and she also knew that sometimes a page might accidentally get opened. So then if they opened that page and then wrote on the top of the page open, then that was them giving her permission to look at those pages that had previously been closed. But she had an understanding with them that she would not read any page that was folded over or any page that had a fold on it that didn't say open at the top.
Yeah.
And and she said that towards the end of the year, as that trust between teacher and student developed, she had all of these newly opened pages. It really brought her to a deeper level of connection and trust with those students.
Yeah, and in public education, I always let the students know, and most do, but if there is anything, as a mandated reporter, we legally have to say or send them to the counselors, even if sometimes we suspect something. So it's really sensitive. I mean, I've had to send students or called counselors and said, please check in on John. I had to do it on Zoom this year. You know, please check in something, you know, a piece of artwork that they drew or something. So it can be a very sensitive issue because it does put the teachers into a situation that there could be court dates, there can be other liabilities that come up because it's like 2 years, and you know, and then yeah. So.
Well, and so we don't want to not give the students the opportunity to do that, because it then puts us in the awkward position of reporting, but also to maintain our trust with our students at the start of the year, when you want to sit down and explain to them that you know, here I am here as your support, as your safety, as your to help you grow and to learn. And part of that is it's my responsibility ethically, if I think that you're going to do something that would hurt yourself or to hurt somebody else in these sorts of situations, as a decent human being, I have to act. And also, because I'm a teacher, I am required by law to act. And so I just want to let all of you know that I am here for you. And also, if I find out about this sort of stuff, I am going to go to bat for you. And part of that is that I'm required by law and also ethically required to bring this forward, because we have processes in place to help keep you safe, to help keep your classmates safe. And if it's, very often there will be problems and issues that are bigger than I can do myself, and that's also why I'm required by the state to then bring this forward and report it. But I want you, so you want to make sure that they all know about your mandatory reporting responsibilities.
Yep. Yeah. So never more, I would have been like, tell me more about this, because never more could mean so many things.
Exactly.
And I had to look really closely at that bubble on my small laptop, to read what it said. I'm like, what,
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, interesting. And it was on the fence, on the line. So years ago, I took something on death and dying with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a scholarship in Malibu. And it was very interesting because they taught, it was like almost art therapy for ourselves, but we had to do it drawing. So I can sometimes look at color. I can look at how many objects are in a drawing. I can count certain things. There's certain things that I can look at, and I can almost pick out when somebody's had a trauma or not a trauma. Not after it almost has to be at the beginning of a class that you just have somebody draw something. But often there's indications of things that happened at ages. I don't have to do that too much in my particular high school position, but it can be done by looking at pages. So yeah. And my internet didn't freeze up.
This is awesome. It is so great to be able to see you and to hear your voice without you. No, it's great. So before we wrap here, let's jump over to Katya, and then we're going to say goodbye to the community. But we will be back next week for more of this, and next week we will also take part of our time to do a little share out where we'll break into some breakout rooms. We'll give this a try. It'll be fun. I think you'll really enjoy it, and we'll build those skills with practice. Take us out, Katya.
All right. Firstly, thank you, Ivea, for calling attention to that. This kind of ties up what was just talked about and something that was going on in the chat, which is telling kids, you're so talented. Now, if I look at a child and go, oh, you're so talented. Well, yeah, it's disingenuous. So of course it needs to be thrown out the door. But in my experience now, I ended my years of teaching with being at a much different school. But over the course of 31 years, I had to file a whole lot of cases of child abuse, sometimes because the kids had huge welts on their skin.
And thank you for being there for those students in that. That is.
Yeah, and I'm not mentioning it because I think, well, it was a heroic thing. It's that the kids come from different places. And so when you say about not telling a child you're so talented because it's not a good thing, there are kids who are not complimented, who don't get it, who think that, I've been told by 5-year-olds I'm stupid. Not me stupid. That's what they tell me about themselves. I've had conferences with parents where they'll tell me, oh, my child is worthless. She doesn't know how to do anything. And I'll be like, look at what they've done. Look at all these amazing things that they can do. She's a great student. She's a great friend, blah, blah, blah. And I have to defend the child to the parent. So if you have students who don't have compliments, any and all compliments are needed. That's why I would do kindness circles with my class. And yeah, it starts off with, I like you, you're pretty. I like you because you're nice. I like you because you're funny. And then it gets into, I like how you did something. But you have to have a baseline. And if the baseline is to say, wow, you are talented, and say it genuinely, it's a starting point for a lot of kids. Because sadly, we live in a society that all kids should feel loved and nurtured and special. And if all kids are treated that way, then you don't have to tell them that they're okay, because they know it inherently, and a lot of kids don't. And I will very honestly say that I had a parent who you know, I had a parent who was wonderful, but I did have a parent who used to tell me lots of lovely things about me. Like I shouldn't be an architect because if I screw up the math, people could die in that equation. You know, that's why I didn't go to school for architecture. Okay. So when you deal with kids who have working parents, might be in a household with, you know, people spewing negative stuff at them all the time, you have to start off with compliments. And so this whole idea that telling them, oh, you're smart is a negative thing. No, telling them and make when they know that you're being dishonest is one thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of our students, a lot of our kids really do not know that they have value.
Yeah.
Too many of our kids don't. So we have to start with something. And if you can think of better compliments, great. But they need
I agree with you that we
don't
want
say
to,
that.
Yeah, I agree that we want to build people up, and
Right.
that,
And maybe there are better ways, but I think it's important
Yeah.
to remember that if that's what you have is, wow, you're talented. Look at you. You're so talented. It's a better thing to say to them than
yes, well, yeah, but both the message you are talented and you are not talented, both of those are fixed mindset statements. Anybody who's saying to somebody you're not talented needs to be, you know, kicked out the door. And we need to insulate our children from them. The folks who are studying growth mindset have looked a lot. There's some really interesting data about the kind of feedback that we give. And we can give lots of positive feedback and compliments around growth mindset concepts. Looking at the way that somebody persevered through something that was difficult, looking at the way that somebody used an alternate approach in a situation. All of those are pointing to things that they did and choices that they made that, you know, that, and we can give very specific compliments and feedback for those things. And when we do, we're giving feedback that is positive and builds up the child, is authentic, and also is based in sort of the principles and ideas of a growth mindset. And so I think that the more that we, you know, like if ever you say like you're talented to somebody, don't go beat yourself up about it, but do realize that when you also give these other forms of feedback that aren't talking about a static state that you are, but that sort of imply that we are the culmination of our work and our decisions, those also empower the kid to build on those. And there's lots of, now there's a lot of research. There's a wonderful TED Talk by Carol Dweck on growth mindset. And I would encourage people to check out the Carol Dweck TED Talk on growth mindsets as a good sort of just warm, fuzzy intro to that. So my friends, thank you all for being here and your participation. This was a very exciting round of the Nature Journal Educators Forum. When we get all these ideas bouncing around in here together, this is how we're going to challenge ourselves as educators and make a difference in our minds and how we teach. And we can also bring those changes to the institutions that we work with. Thank you for what you have done for our children. Thank you for what you will continue to do for those children. I have such deep respect and gratitude for you all as this community of educators. There's nothing that is as critical for us to do right now than be really working on the growth and development of our youth, the way that you have devoted your life to. And thank you. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Happy 2021.
Yeah,
Happy New
thanks,
Year.
Jack.
Happy
Happy New
2021.
Year.
Yeah.
That's right. Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you all. Thank you,
Happy
Jack.
New Year.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, my friends.
Hey, Jack, are
Bye.
you taking tomorrow off?
Yes, I have no class tomorrow.
Okay, great.
I will be out of town.
Nice. Enjoy the long weekend. See you
I-
guys next week. Happy New Year, Ray Bonto and Arpan.
Hey, Happy New Year. Happy New Year there in London. Good to see you guys. And I look forward to seeing you again in the new year.
Yeah.
And thank you for inspiring this awesome conversation, Ray Bonto.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, Ray Bonto, your work inspired this whole group of educators to have this conversation about kind of teaching each other and work with peers. So you are motivating and inspiring this community. Oh, and I just wanted to show you what's now on the cover of my journal.
Yeah, I know. I was going to put that in mine too. I love it. Take care, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye-bye, my
Thank
friends.
you.
Thank you all. Happy New Year.